All right, 8 o'clock, and the polls in Michigan just closed, and the counting has begun in this historic election. Tonight, we will walk you through the counties in Michigan that can swing the presidential election, the key states that will determine the outcome, and what results we could know today and even in the days ahead.
But our coverage doesn't end there. The election includes so many down ballot candidates and issues in Michigan, including control of the state house, congressional districts, and the state and local proposals. Good evening, I'm Chuck Stokes.
And I'm Glenda Lewis. Welcome to our special coverage on election night. It will be a very long night, even a very long few days ahead as we await the results.
We begin at the TCF Center, a major hub for Detroit's Department of Elections. Channel 7 anchor Carolyn Clifford joining us there live. Carolyn, what's the absentee ballot counting process there?
Oh, Chuck and Glenda, you know it has been tough. Think about it. 10,000 volunteers have signed up to help sort, process, and count ballots here at the TCF Center in downtown Detroit. People have been here since 7 this morning processing absentee ballots. It's called the Central Counting Board, and it's right behind us. This team of volunteers started their job yesterday, actually, and they will continue working in shifts through tomorrow night until every absentee ballot is counted. This operation was launched back in August when there were problems counting ballots. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and Detroit City Clerk Janice Winfrey are expected to speak any moment now right here at the TCF Center. We'll have much more on their message coming up on Action News at 10 on TV 20 Detroit and, of course, at 11 on Channel 7. You know, I've been asking volunteers why it was so important for them to be here. One woman told me she's a teacher and it was her duty to be here and to help with these ballots so every voice would be heard here in Wayne County. Another volunteer who is actually physically challenged and in a wheelchair told me this is a matter of life and death for her. She said after nearly losing her life in a car accident, God spared her so she could make a difference in this world and right here in Michigan and make it really a better place to live. It's been wonderful talking to all of these volunteers. I've been watching them come and go, and you can see it's getting busier and busier, but that room back there, really busy. They said even investigators are back there making sure everything is okay with the machines, and pretty much everything's been going smoothly so far. So our fingers are crossed here in Wayne County that it will continue that way up until tomorrow once every ballot is counted. Chuck, Glenda?
Yeah, the line really starting to fill up behind you out there, Carolyn, compared to even just 10 minutes ago.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like people just started pouring in. That room back there, like I told you, where the 10,000 volunteers, of course, not all at once, are back there really, really busy. If you walk to the windows, you can see everybody working hard, hard, hard. But another shift of workers are coming in now, and we actually had to move out of their way. And I see people as they keep coming. I actually saw my niece. She surprised me, and she said she's going to start her shift right now, and she won't be finished until 5 in the morning. So a lot of people coming here and wanting to just be a part of this historic election and really wanting to make a difference here in Michigan. And like I said, really for the world, because the eyes of the world are watching us here in America.
That is a good trait to run in the family. That's one to pass down. Yeah. All right, Chuck.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Glenda. It's a historic day for the Detroit Lions. The team was the first in the NFL to offer its stadium to help in this election.
And as a result, tonight Ford Field has been transformed into a receiving board site for the city's ballots. We're going to go now to 7 Action News reporter Kim Russell live at Ford Field with a look at the activity out there. Kim, what's happening?
The poll workers are here, they are ready, and the action is really about to start. Take a look behind me. You can see everyone set up, ready to serve as receiving boards workers here at Ford Field. Now, that means that after precincts close at 8, ballots and equipment will be brought here to be double checked over. So it's going to take a little time for the activity to really start happening here, but you can see that they are ready. This is the first time that the Lions have offered up Ford Field. For this, the team tells me it realized that with COVID-19 raising concerns about social distancing during elections, it could help.
Over the summer, when we were talking about our players and basically them being pioneers in the social justice space, this came up as a priority of theirs. And so we were like, we went to the city of Detroit, we asked what we can do, how we can help.
The receiving board's job is to double check ballots, to make sure they're properly sealed, to make sure records are correct, and that all of the ballots are received. The job is very important because it makes sure that if there are any issues, that the ballots are able to be looked at and reviewed, and everyone here taking their jobs very seriously. Reporting live at Ford Field, Kim Russell, 7 Action News.
All right, Kim, thank you. Brian Abel will be watching the presidential race all night long.
Brian, what will you be looking for to get an indication of who will pull out the win here in Michigan?
Well, guys, let's start with Macomb County. Why? Because it flipped for the president back in 2016, famously. A double-digit margin and a roughly 15-point swing from 2012. Between presidential and races for the governor, Macomb's got it right the past 7 elections, so we will be looking there. Both candidates, they've also visited Macomb multiple times this election cycle. And how about Wayne County? Yes, it did not go for the president in 2016, but voter turnout for Democrats significantly dropped in 2016. Enough of a difference that was far greater than the president's 10,000 vote win here. And we'll also be looking at Oakland County and we'll be looking at Kent County on the west side of the state too. But I do want to give you guys some quick updates here. A flurry of states have been called in the presidential race in just the last few moments, guys. So first I'll give you this Joe Biden side. Biden has won Vermont, Virginia, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maryland, Illinois, Delaware, and Connecticut. And the President Trump has won Kentucky, West Virginia, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama so far. So those polls are closing and some state numbers starting to come in right away. Back to you guys.
All right, Brian, thank you. The numbers trickling in. We're watching them state by state, Chuck.
No doubt about it. Joining us now is Laura Cox. She is the GOP chair for the Republican Party here in the state of Michigan, and Lavora Barnes. She is the Michigan Democratic chair. Thank you both for joining us today. Clearly a lot at stake for both parties here. What's your sense of the mood of Michigan right now? I'll start with you, Laura Cox.
We feel the energy and the enthusiasm is on our side. We're excited to work for all our Republican candidates up and down the ballot, and we're excited to watch the returns come in as we just closed the polls here moments ago.
Laura, that last push, we did see the president, many of his family members, including his daughter Tiffany in Birmingham, they were everywhere in Michigan, really putting their foot down here. How do you think that message resonated in those last few moments?
Well, you know, I'm a wrestling mom, and that we always told our boys, you know, leave everything on the mat. And the president absolutely did. It was unbelievable. He's been here 6 times in the last 30 days. The vice president has been here numerous times. And like you said, his family has been across the state. And we're just so excited. Folks are excited across the state to see our president lead from the front. And we're excited for tonight.
Madam Chair, West Michigan has always been the stronghold traditionally for the Republican Party in this state. You're from this side of the state, Southeast Michigan, as chair. That's a little bit of flip from past tradition. What are you expecting out of Wayne County, and do you feel that your leadership on this side of the state may make a big difference?
Well, we're always looking to improve in every county. The president won by a little over 10,000 votes. I know that we hope we win a little bit more on the margins, but I don't think we're going to win Wayne County. But we sure hope counties like Macomb County deliver stronger for the president.
What are you most worried about? You know, everybody has voted, but there has to be some consternation back there, and you're saying, boy, I hope this doesn't happen.
Well, you know, this has been a different kind of election. I think that Lavora would agree with me on that. It's not traditional. We had new laws put in place, and then we had, of course, the COVID restrictions. So it's been very different, but we've been very nimble, and we've really adapted well. And I feel that, you know, we've left, like I said, we've left it on the mat. The volunteers, the staff have been absolutely wonderful. The enthusiasm is there for Republicans, and we're just looking to celebrate victories up and down the ballot.
Yeah, and we should say that Lavora Barnes was supposed to be with us, the two of you head to head here. For some reason, she's not here, maybe technological gizmos.
Chuck, I'm here.
Oh, she is there.
All
Okay.
right.
All right. Very
Okay.
good. All right. We're glad to have you. I'll start off a question and then throw it to Glenda.
Sure.
Same question that I asked Laura Cox, Madam Chair. What's the mood of Michigan, in your opinion, for the Democrats?
I have to say, Chuck, I was out there today and the enthusiasm was just beautiful to see. People were out voting and celebrating voting. I got to watch some first-time voters vote and get cheered on by their neighbors and their friends. It feels good out here to be a Michigan voter today.
And Lavora, thank you for being with us. This is Glenda. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you, Glenda?
Doing fine. Watching these numbers come in and the states come in. Much of the message from the Democratic side was this is do or die time. And there were many people who felt inspired and energized by the fact that their life may depend on this vote. What would you say about how that message translated to getting people to the polls?
You know, we spent a lot of time telling people to vote as though their lives depended on it, because many of us did feel that our lives depended on this election and the outcome of this election. So it translated to folks sort of taking that mood, that spirit of, frankly, a little bit of protest and taking that protest straight to the ballot box. So a lot of the folks who had been marching and protesting throughout this entire year have taken that protest to the ballot box and voted with their hearts and their heads. And it feels good to have had our voices heard today.
Madam Chair, what do you expect from the west side of the state? You're from Grand Rapids, not traditionally a stronghold for the Democratic Party. Will your being in charge of the Democratic Party and from that section of the state make a difference? You're also the first African-American chair elected here in Michigan for the Democratic Party.
The first African-American chair, although I'm from Ann Arbor, not from Grand Rapids. My predecessor, Brandon Dillon, was from Grand Rapids. But let me tell you, we've made some terrific...
My mistake.
No, don't worry about it. We've made some terrific inroads on the west side of the state. We feel really good about the work that we've done there. We've got terrific candidates running. We're looking to pick up 1 or 2 congressional seats on the west side of the state. We're really proud of the work we've done there and the team we've built out there. Started with Brandon, and it's grown since then.
Well, we certainly congratulate you on making history, Madam Chair, and taking the moment to join us tonight. That is a point of pride, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you in the near future.
Anytime, really. It's my pleasure to be with you all.
All right, thank you so much. Stay safe.
Incumbent Gary Peters is defending his Senate seat. We have watched this heated and expensive Senate race against John James. Amira David is at Peters' watch party in Pontiac, and she's joining us now live. They were playing Celebration earlier, Amira. Is the music still going?
The music is still going, and they're treating it as a celebration of sorts. This is a very atypical election night for sure, Glenda. I want to step out of the way so you can see what's going on behind me here. As you can see, cars are coming through because this is a drive-through thank you event for his supporters. Senator Peters has been greeting his supporters one by one here in Pontiac at the M1 Concourse Raceway, and certainly a pandemic-inspired idea. The senator greeting supporters, taking pictures with them. Campaign officials telling me it was important to Peters to keep it outdoors and to do it in a way where they could adhere to social distancing guidelines. The senator thanking supporters comprised of volunteers and donors to show his appreciation for a hard-fought election battle, a battle he is hoping to win, and at this point is thought to win. The senator polling 5 points ahead of his Republican challenger, John James. Of course, we don't know the results yet, but for Democrats, Peters holding on to this seat is key to winning back the Senate majority. Right now, Republicans control the Senate 53-47. The polls have closed, so for now, we wait and see. Time will tell us whether Democrats as a whole are successful in flipping the Senate with the help of Peters, the freshman senator fighting to return to Washington for a second term. We are live in Pontiac. Amira David, 7 Action News.
And we are watching Senator Peters. We see him live now behind you, Amira, from Kool and the Gang to Journey. Away we go. Rudy Harper joins us now with more on the John James campaign. What's happening out there, Rudy?
Well, Glenda, there's a lot of excitement here at the John James Warehouse, just right outside of downtown Detroit. I want to show you, you can see the TVs are on here inside the warehouse where employees are watching those results come in. And then just outside here is a large tent set up for supporters where there's also TVs inside there that are on, and I can hear that they're blaring as these results trickle in right now. A lot of supporters here, and they're really excited about this. They really think that they can flip this seat. Now, John James is expected to arrive here at any moment now. We are in constant communications with his communications director about how they feel about tonight. She told me, you know, they traveled the state yesterday. They went across the state to different counties and different cities to make their last and final closing elevator pitch to voters before Election Day today. And they think they got this in the bag. They truly think that they can flip this state. And as you also know, that John James has the support of the president, Donald Trump. He's been on stage with him and he has his background. So a lot of excitement here at the John James Watch Party. Of course, we're going to stay in contact with them and see how they feel throughout the night. Back to you.
All right, Rudy, thank you for joining us.
Dave Dulio, he's a familiar political analyst and a fixture around here at Channel 7. He joins us now. Dave is the director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Dave, how are you?
Good, Chuck. How are you?
Very good. All right, we've been watching this campaign, it seems like forever, in terms of the presidential race, almost 3 years now. Any first thoughts?
I guess it's all about a couple of states, right? I'm looking at Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania as really key indicators as to which direction the presidential race is going to go.
Yeah, and is your gut feeling what Michigan may do? We go back and forth.
Well, you know, I see a number of conflicting pieces of information. The high absentee vote turnout would seem to favor Joe Biden, but I see pictures and reports of long lines, high election day turnout. That would favor President Trump. I think it's going to end up being pretty close once again.
What races are you watching very, very closely?
Here in Michigan, obviously the U.S. Senate race. I think that can tell us quite a bit about the strength of Donald Trump's run here. I'm also looking at the three actually hotly contested congressional races in the 3rd, the 8th, and the 11th. I think those can also be a barometer to some extent on the presidential. And in Oakland County, certainly the prosecutor's race and the county executive race, as well as some of those county commission seats in Oakland County that had flipped from Republican to Democrat in 2018, to see how competitive those are.
You know, the number of absentee ballots requested truly historic this year. So how do you see absentee playing a role in voter turnout and what it will mean for this election? Talk about absentee ballots.
Sure. I think that in Michigan right now, it's never been easier to cast a ballot, right? We have a multitude of ways, including election day registration and balloting. So I think that's a great thing for our state. I think the strong historic absentee vote prior to election day says a lot about how organized the state was, how organized the campaigns were, mainly on the Democratic side. But the key thing is really going to be when we look at the absentee vote, how big of a lead, say, does Joe Biden have or does Gary Peters have? And then how does that get ticked away during counting of election day ballots?
Dave, real quick question. Democrats seem to think that they can flip the Michigan House. Do you think that they're on solid ground there, or they might be having delusions of grandeur?
Well, I think that there's, probably 4 or 5 districts. They need 4. There's probably 4 or 5 districts that are in play. I think that at this point, it's probably going to be a tough hill to climb, if only because they flipped a lot of Republican-leaning districts 2 years ago, and there aren't that many left for them to go pick off.
Well, Dave, we certainly appreciate your insight always. Hope you're able to stick around for us a little bit if we come back to you. Thank you for your insight. We'll talk to you later on tonight. Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Republicans and Democrats hoping to win big, of course, in the local races, too. 7 Action News reporter Jennifer Ann Wilson live in Lansing tonight at the Convention Center, where the Michigan GOP watch party will get underway soon. And watch parties become victory parties sometimes, but this year we don't expect results before midnight. So what is the main focus of this party tonight, Jennifer Ann?
Well, you know, the Republicans here in Michigan are very optimistic about what tonight will bring, and they're here to celebrate a race hard fought. They've all been working very hard to run the races and to be a part of the campaigns. They're here to support each other, to support, of course, Trump and their other candidates. But this watch party, they'll literally be watching as those numbers come in, and they'll also still be watching the actual counting of the ballots. Of course, we've seen that there are many tabulation centers tabulating those absentee ballots, and Michigan Republicans say that they trained about 2.5 times more poll watchers and poll challengers this year than back in 2018. There are about a half a dozen other organizations that also have poll challengers and watchers, including the Democrats, that have their eyes on things as well. But so far here in the Republican, at the Republican Watch Party, they say there haven't been any major issues at the polls. They have lawyers on standby, and it's more than just the presidential and Senate races they're watching. For example, the Michigan State Supreme Court currently has majority Republican nominated justices, but there are 2 slots open, and they're hoping to keep that majority.
A few weeks ago, the Michigan Supreme Court ruled that the governor's actions with her executive orders were unconstitutional in her lockdown executive orders. And so that kind of brings to light how important it is to have rule of law judges in the Michigan Supreme Court. So we feel really confident that we're going to elect 2 rule of law judges in Mr. Schwartzel and Ms. Kelly. I think we've been really clear. If there's something afoul, something afoot, something that doesn't look right, of course we are going to challenge it. But right now, we're just steady as she goes. We're going to see what direction everything goes as we kind of proceed through this election.
Well, Chuck and Glenda, you were just talking about the State House of Representatives, and currently there is a Republican majority, and they say they plan on not only keeping that majority, but increasing the gap so they have an even stronger lead here in the state. Reporting live in Lansing, I'm Jennifer Ann Wilson, 7 Action News.
All right, Jennifer Ann, we will see you soon. Thank you so much. Kimberly Craig is at a drive-in watch party for Michigan Democrats in Novi. And Kim, what's the party like there?
Oh, Glenda, first of all, it's chilly and it's an outdoor event, but folks are staying warm as they socially distance in their vehicles. And this event is being hosted by Progress Michigan, and it's the Drive-In for Democracy. Sam Inglot is the Deputy Director for Progress Michigan. And Sam, let me ask you, first of all, what are you expecting to happen here this evening? I know we have some speakers that are appearing virtually, and some will also appear here in person as folks sit in their vehicles.
Yeah, so this is the Drive-In for Democracy. It's a family-friendly, fun event where folks can come, sit in their cars, listen to some great speakers, watch the election results roll in. We've got some food trucks here, and what we're doing is just trying to put on an event so folks could come with their families, listen, watch the results roll in, and just kind of take a breather from pretty hectic election season.
And talk about what happens after tonight, real quick.
Yeah, so tonight we wait. After the polls close, you know, it's we're at past 8 o'clock. So if you're in line to vote, stay in line. Yes. But you know, after this, we're really preaching patience. You know, we're asking folks to be patient while our election officials make sure that every single vote gets counted, because that's what's important. You know, people work so hard over the past year. People, you know, filled out their absentee ballots, dropped them off, and we want to make sure that every vote gets counted.
Absolutely. All right, Sam Inglot with Progress Michigan, back to you.
All right, Kim, thank you for that. And we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Now, from 7 Action News, this is an election update.
The votes are in, but who will win? Tonight, America decides between 2 very different visions for the future of America. Good evening, I'm Carolyn Clifford. Coming to you live from the TCF Center in Detroit, the polls in Michigan closed just 24 minutes ago. And from what we are hearing, a record number of voters came out to cast their ballots. Results are just starting to trickle in for Michigan, but we are not expecting to see anything substantial for at least a few hours. But the biggest race we are watching, of course, is the contest between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. And remember, tonight's magic number is 270, and you are going to be hearing it a lot tonight. There are a total of 538 electoral votes, and whichever presidential candidate is first to clinch a simple majority, at least 270, wins the presidential election. Now, in the heated U.S. Senate race between Democratic incumbent Gary Peters and his Republican challenger John James, no Republican nominee has won a U.S. Senate seat in Michigan since the Republican wave of 1994, and Spencer Abraham was voted out after one 6-year term.
Well, tonight our Amira David will be with the Peters campaign in Pontiac watching results. Rudy Harper with the John James campaign at his business in Southwest Detroit will be there live when a winner is ultimately announced.
Well, Dave, now that the polls are closed, many of Detroit's ballots will be heading to Ford Field.
That's because the home of the Detroit Lions is hosting receiving boards for the city's ballots.
7 Action News reporter Kim Russo has more now from Ford Field. Kim.
Yes, this is something that's never been done before at Ford Field. What really happened is the Detroit Lions said that they wanted to help with this election. They wanted to be part of the democratic process, and they knew that with COVID-19, it was likely that the city could benefit from a really large space. So take a look behind me. You can see poll workers all set up at tables all around the stadium, ready to serve as workers running the receiving boards. Now, what that means is that now that the polls have closed, as ballots are processed, they're going to be brought here to be double checked. The receiving board double checks ballots, make sure they're properly sealed, they print records, check that the right number of ballots are received. I spoke to one worker who says that workers here take this job very seriously.
Well, we want to let them know that once they cast their votes, the votes are going to be in good hands. We're going to make sure that there's no glitches and everything flows the way it should.
Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is going to be here later on this evening to thank poll workers for all of their work and talk to us as well. We'll have that later on 7 Action News. Reporting live at Ford Field, Kim Russell, 7 Action News.
All right, Kim, thank you there. Now we have Team 7 coverage of Election Night 2020 in Metro Detroit as the results come pouring in from across our region, the state, and the entire nation.
Of course, you can count on Action News to bring you up-to-the-minute coverage throughout the night on this historic election.
Our coverage continues through 10 o'clock on Roku, WXYZ.com, and all of your favorite streaming devices. We will also bring you election updates every half hour on Channel 7, followed by in-depth coverage on Action News at 10 on TV 20 and at 11 right here on Channel 7.
Stay with us online and, of course, on 7 Action News for the very latest results, analysis, and reaction. Good night.
This has been an election update from 7 Action News. Stay with 7 Action News and WXYZ.com for all your election coverage.
And welcome back to our special election coverage. The polls are now closed and the counting is underway, Chuck.
You're right, Glenda, and we could be waiting a while for results, and those results could swing one way or another and then back again as numbers keep coming in from in-person and absentee voting. Latino press contributor Paula Adrian joins us now. Paula, you've been following all of these important issues from the Latino community. What has stood out most in your mind?
Well, there are a lot of issues, obviously, that are impacting the Latino community nowadays, but the one definitely is the immigration. Just how it is being treated is very not humane. Starting off when they started separating the children from their parents, and just not really looking forward to working with the dreamers that are currently here. That is one of the things that's obviously impacting the community.
Sure. We know that oftentimes the Latina vote swings with sometimes the Democratic Party, sometimes with the Republican Party, depending on which section of the country you're in. What kind of turnout do you expect here in Michigan based upon some of these key issues?
Well, we have been talking to a lot of people, with Latino press. We interview, from young generations, first-time voters to older ones. And this has been one of those elections that we do definitely see more Democratic than previous ones.
Yeah. Have Latinos felt very frustrated throughout this election process that maybe they aren't getting the attention and respect that they deserve, given the fact that they are the largest minority in the country right now and one of the fastest growing?
Yeah, and definitely respect is one of those things that really got a hold of, every Latino sentiment, because, the Latinos come here to really work and, they're constantly contributing to this country, and just being disrespected the way that it has been with the president is definitely not a good feeling. And it's not only to the individuals that are currently voting, but we're also thinking about how is that really going to affect our children that were born here.
Paula, oftentimes when you go to select a candidate, you look for that person that reflects your voice, your issues, the things that are important to you and your family. Do you feel like the Latino community has found that voice in either candidate?
I think with Joe Biden, definitely we have. With the previous administration, even with when Obama was, in the administration with Joe Biden, we did feel a little bit like something more could have been done for the DACA and the Dreamers. However, in Joe Biden's plan, definitely right off the bat, he's trying to work with the Dreamers and just trying to make a better immigration process altogether.
All right. Well, Ms. Paula, we certainly thank you for joining us tonight and keeping us abreast on your community as it relates to our whole community as one, as Americans. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Macomb County, of course, a central focus for both presidential campaigns, and we can show you why. Energetic supporters in both campaigns came face to face at a very busy poll in Warren.
Jim Kirshner has been there all afternoon and all evening with that part of our election night story. Jim?
Chuck and Glenda, let me tell you, we've moved into the lobby of the St. Clair Shores City Hall because workers from 23 precincts are going to be bringing in their materials, but we can show you the action news related to this election when it comes to the presidential race. Take a look at Warren from this afternoon. We weren't exactly sure what was going to happen here as people came not only face to face, but nose to nose. Warren police had the discretion and they chose not to move in and make any arrests they could have for disorderly conduct, assault, voter intimidation. Again, that did not happen. Election law is clear that partisans have to remain 100 feet from the poll. We talked with people on both sides in this high-stakes election.
I think it's kind of insane, to be honest. I've never seen anything like it. They're here intimidating voters, in my opinion. They've got the speakers blaring. As you can see, they're blocking the parking lot where people are trying to get in and out to vote.
Our intention is just that, to share the love that we have for our president and our country and for each and every one of them. There's a law that you can't be 100 feet, otherwise you're electioneering, and we're far away from 100 feet.
So this time around, the question is, are they going to come out and vote for Trump? Are you going to find folks that didn't vote for Hillary last time out there voting for Biden? So it's going to be very interesting to see, and I can't quite get a read on it.
Now, as we all know, Trump won Michigan 4 years ago, the surprise victory by only 10,700 votes statewide. Macomb County turned out big for him 4 years ago. Will they do the same again this year? We're also watching, as part of that equation, Oakland County, Kent County, over in Grand Rapids on the other side, Wayne County, Detroit, also equally important for the Democrats and Joe Biden and the turnouts there. Also in Macomb County, we're going to be following the countywide races for prosecutor and county clerk. Live in St. Clair Shores, Jim Kurtzner, 7 Action News. Back to you guys.
Jim, thanks so much. Indeed, Macomb County has always been that bread and butter county that votes with its pocketbook. Wayne County Clerk Kathy M. Garrett joins us now. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. I know you're probably exhausted. Are you expecting to release any of the results anytime soon?
Well, let me explain what happens here. We can't release anything until one or however many of the 43 local clerks transmit their results to us.
Okay, so counting tonight, and we anticipate in the days ahead. Correct, ma'am?
Are you talking to me?
Yes. We're going to be counting for a while. We know that there are more than 500,000 absentee ballots requested, more than 400,000 returned absentee ballots. We've got those numbers coming in. So we're talking about how the vote will count.
Right. So when he asked me how many results would we had, and I was sharing what the process is. So of course they'll be counting through the night, but we don't get results until the local clerk models the results into the county.
All right. Very good. All right. Clerk Garrett, thank you so much for joining us. We'll keep a watch on what's happening in Wayne County. It's indeed the most populous county in this state, and it has the city of Detroit smack dab in it. So we'll keep tabs on it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it was tough to get her picture and her sound there, but hopefully maybe we can get back to her.
We'll work on that.
Kent County, we know another battleground in this election. Doug Reardon from our sister station WMXI in Grand Rapids joining us tonight. Doug, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, and thank you for having us. We know that this West Michigan region, these dozen or so counties that we cover over here on the west side of the state, are very important. They make up about 20% of the state's electorate, and as you mentioned, Kent County is a very important part of that. Now, it went to Trump in 2016, it went to Governor Whitmer in 2018, Romney over Obama in 2012, and Republican Rick Snyder in 2010. And so this is the definition of a swing county, guys. As you have Macomb over on the east side of the state, we have Kent County that acts as a bellwether for determining who might actually win this race. We know that Joe Biden spent quite a bit of money in the state of Michigan, about $150 million between Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And we've seen the ads here in West Michigan as well. So we know that there's a lot of time being put into this race here. We have had visits from both the president and the vice president as well. And again, it was a bit of a surprise to see Kent County go for the president in 2016, but we're trying to see if these 10,000 voters that have been added to our electorate since that day in 2016 in the city of Grand Rapids make a difference one way or another, blue or red, guys. And so we are just starting to get results in now. We wish you the best of luck over on the east side of the state, and thank you for having us in Grand Rapids. Doug Reardon, Fox 17 News.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Yes. WXMI, Doug Reardon, we thank you for joining us and giving us an update about how things are shaking out there. A hotly contested county, again, adding into the importance of our state in this election.
No doubt about it. It's always that kind of east and west, which one's going to show out the most here in Michigan. Author and political analyst Eric Hamm is joining us now. He hails originally from the state of Michigan, right here in the city of Detroit, but now resides in Washington, D.C. And the first thing he'll always tell you is go blue. Right, Eric?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Chuck.
You're gonna have problems with
Can
Glenda
we take a vote on
that? Luckily, I'm farther away from you guys.
That's right.
Eric, what's your sense of what's going to happen, and particularly the role that Michigan is going to play. We've been a key battleground state, not just this time around, but in past history as well.
That's right. And, we're looking at the numbers coming in, particularly we're looking at Florida. Everything right now for me for the last hour has been Florida, Florida, Florida. We've been seeing some of those numbers in Ohio as well. And it looks like we are seeing this race pretty much play to type in terms of what took place in 2016, where you've got the Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, is running up the lead in many of these urban areas and the surrounding suburbs. And President Donald Trump is running up the lead in many of these out counties, the rural areas. And so I think that is the epitome of why Michigan is a battleground state. Because again, Michigan is a state where you have both blue and red, and it's going to be a fight. And I think it's going to be a fight to the very finish in terms of the outcome. And that's why so much of the emphasis over this last month was placed on Michigan, because Michigan is going to be central to any success that either of these candidates have tonight.
Yeah. Eric, are you surprised that foreign affairs has not played a bigger role in this particular election? That's something that you follow on a daily basis.
No, actually, I'm not, particularly when you look at what's taking place with COVID-19 and what's happening across the country with the increase in the number of cases across the country, where you've got so many states, especially many of those upper Midwest states that are really battling with this virus right now. People are focused on the economy, what it means for their jobs, what it means for their families, and how do we get past this? And so I think until we do that, much of the country is looking inward at which two of these candidates can adequately battle this virus and get us past this.
African American women have been the backbone of the Democratic Party, but certainly both presidential candidates have been trying to make inroads to African American males. What do you expect?
Well, right now, especially if you look at a state like Florida, Joe Biden, and you look at the Miami-Dade area, this is an area where Joe Biden, his struggles are really beginning to show. He has struggled with Latinos, particularly Latino men, and President Donald Trump has seen an uptick in his support among African-American men. Now, what President Trump is hoping is that success that we're seeing in Florida carries over to places like Philadelphia and Detroit, where he can perhaps peel some of those African-American men away from Joe Biden. What Joe Biden is hoping is that those struggles that he is seeing, particularly with African-American men and Latino men, don't continue to play out across the country, especially in Michigan and Pennsylvania. But when we look at what's going on in Ohio and North Carolina right now, it looks like Joe Biden is building his own coalition. But again, can that work out? Can that carry out in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania? Because right now, even though what we're looking at in Ohio, Georgia, and Florida, this is still going to come down to those three Great Lakes states. Who wins? Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And right now, that's what it's all about.
Eric Hamm, thank you so much. Glenda wanted me to remind you of where the Paul Bunyan trophy is right now. I'll turn it over to Glenda.
Don't make me pull it out for you.
That's a dagger to the heart. I was hoping not to think about that.
It's all in love.
Yes, Eric, and we've enjoyed having you tonight. Thank you so much. We appreciate your insight as always.
Thank you.
We're going to turn now to Oakland County. Simon Shaquette has been closely following the races in that county, and Simon joining us now live to tell us what he's seeing tonight. Simon.
Yeah, Glenda, Chuck, some very early numbers starting to come in here in Oakland County that indicate a very strong voter turnout. Now, keep in mind, they will be calculating those votes obviously into the early morning hours, so these are very early numbers. But let me share with you what we're learning. That said, in top county races being decided, we're talking about the offices of county executive, prosecutor, and sheriff. For current county exec Dave Coulter, a Democrat facing Mike Kowal, who is a former state senator and a Republican. The numbers show Kowal leading Coulter 115,468 votes to 73,935. That is with 2.57 precincts reporting. Also for Judge Karen McDonald, running as a Democrat for prosecutor against former Assistant Prosecutor Lynn Getz, who is a Republican. The numbers indicate that Getz is in the lead with 112,000 votes, roughly 77,000 for McDonald. Again, that's with only 2.57 precincts reporting. Now, we did catch up with the sheriff just a short while ago, who's also running for office, talking about some of the security, the safety, and the peaceful scene, frankly, at the polling locations today. Take a listen to the sheriff.
We connect, I think we communicate a lot with our public, with the community. We engage them in a partnership in different big events like elections. And we also have a really close working partnership with all of our chiefs. So we're all on the same page. And I think that leads to a safe environment when people are talking, they're connected, and they're working together.
Now, as we speak, the sheriff leads his opponent, that is the challenger, Vincent Gregory, a former deputy, by 133,588 votes to 63,072. Obviously, so much more to be decided, Glenda, this evening. This is just very early, less than 3% reporting, but we are starting to get some of those early numbers in. Back to you.
They are trickling in, Simon, and we'll stay on top of them. Thank you so much for sharing the update from there. We're going to go now to Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and City Clerk Janice Winfrey, who you can see in the live pictures there, joining us for a look at what's happening, holding a press conference at the TCF Center.
You know, it's an early press conference for me on Election Day because we don't have a whole lot of numbers for you. We have numbers as of 7:30, right? But we've issued 190,000 absentee ballots, and about 172,000 of those were returned. As of 7:30, we have about 120 absentee ballots that have been tabulated. However, only about 80,000 of those have been published, meaning that the difference has to go through the adjudication process. And we'll have our election consultants talk about that process shortly. We know that we had about 15% of our voters show up at the precincts today to vote their ballot in person. So we expect a little uptick in the turnout from the projection earlier this week. We expect we'll have about 53 to 55% turnout for this election. Again, all these numbers are preliminary and as of 7:30 p.m. As you know, some of you know, I have to give back to the Department of Elections because I collect my own memory cards from the precincts. So with that, I'm going to entertain a question or two, and then we can move forward. I can move forward. Yes. Right. 120,000. I'm sorry. Let me tell you about my day today. It's been long. 120,000 have been published. So again, gone through the tabulator, about 120,000. About 80,000 of those have been published, meaning they've gone through the adjudication process. They've been looked at, there's no errors, and they're good to go. The difference still has to go through that process. And you can ask the election consultants detailed information about that process. Any other questions for me? If not,
any problems with the post office? Do you believe that all the ballots have been delivered?
Absolutely. And I have to thank the postmaster for the city of Detroit, Darren Bray. He has personally picked up ballots on Sunday from the Department of Elections to ensure that they are mailed to our voters. We have been using overnight mail for the last week and a half to ensure that our voters get their mail. And Darren Bray, our postmaster for the city of Detroit, has made that happen for us. And so we're very grateful and thankful for him.
Can you say how many total ballots were cast in Detroit today?
How many total ballots we've cast in Detroit today? I'm gonna let Mr. Baxter answer that question because I've gone over the numbers that I think if you just, I'm gonna let him go over that. I'm tired, I'm not gonna lie. Any other questions?
Question about the receiving boards at Ford Field.
Going on now.
The Pistons facility. Are all of the receiving boards at one of those two facilities, and where will
Those facilities help that process. And where do they go from there after they're double checked there? What's the next step?
So we still have a couple of receiving boards in the streets of Detroit. All of the receiving boards prior to this election, prior to our Secretary of State using her resources to allow us to go into the stadiums, all of them were in various buildings throughout the city of Detroit. We still have a couple of them out there because they run so well where they are, Greater Grace Temple and Jesu Church. They're still, receiving boards are there. The rest of them are either at the Pistons Performing Center or the Ford Field. So the receiving board collects all the work from the precincts, right? So their paperwork, their poll books, and their ballots and their transfer cases are brought down so that those people, those poll workers that are stationed there can look through the work and make sure that everything is signed as it should, every seal should match, and every transfer case is sealed properly. From there, those ballots will be brought to the Department of Elections.
Any idea when you'll have the unofficial tally for Detroit?
The way the work is going here at TCF, the way that the work is going, it looks like, and I'm not making promises, but if we continue at this pace, we should have 100% results by about this time tomorrow, at the earliest.
All right, once again, that's Wayne County Clerk Janice Winfrey updating us on Wayne County, and overlooking her was Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who you saw with the mask right behind her. And joining us now is Oakland County Clerk Lisa Brown joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very good. Can you bring us up to speed, Madam Clerk, on what's happening in Oakland County?
We've got results coming in. 11 of the 16 municipalities that we tabulated their absentee ballots for, we've got those results already posted. So that's close to 100,000 ballots just from those municipalities. So still have a few more to do, but we've got results coming in and we're pushing them out as soon as we can.
Turnout seems and feels incredible. Lisa, can you talk about what you have seen from your side?
Well, we already knew that we were having a great turnout, from the response of absentee voters. And just anecdotally hearing from voters around the county as to what number they were in the precincts, we know that, people still voted today on election day. So I think that, we might be close to setting a record for the county. We'll see. But I think we're going to have a nice turnout, which is nice.
Do you expect any surprises in Oakland County? As of late, Oakland County has trended more in terms of Democrats than it has Republican. It has indeed been a real Republican stronghold historically. We see that changing. Macomb County seems to be taking part of that title. What's your thoughts?
2020 has been full of surprises. I think we have to wait to see what the voters thought about everything.
And when do you expect, some people are saying a couple days. Will it go beyond the end of the week? Could it?
Not for Oakland County. I can't imagine that happening. No. In August, we had a few municipalities that we got in early Wednesday morning. So, I would think perhaps it will happen again, although they did take advantage of Senate Bill 757, which allowed them to start the processing, opening the envelopes yesterday. So hopefully that helps them. Of course, they have more ballots than August, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. We're all waiting to see how it goes. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate having you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our special.
Now, from 7 Action News, this is an election update.
Welcome back to our special election night coverage. I'm Dave Llewellyn.
And I'm Carolyn Clifford, coming to you live from the TCF Center in downtown Detroit. Another shift of volunteers are arriving right now. They're counting and processing Wayne County ballots behind me. 10,000 people are responsible for this massive operation that kicked off yesterday. A lot of people mainly concerned about the presidential race tonight, but we are monitoring 2 critical House races at this hour.
Oh, Brian Abel joins us now with an update on those races. Brian.
Yeah, those 2 races have incumbent freshman Democrats trying to hold their seats. So let's start with Michigan's 8th congressional district. You see it here. Incumbent Rep. Alyssa Slotkin challenged by Republican Paul Young. The district covering Ingham, Livingston, and parts of Oakland County. You see 2% reporting so far. So very, very early in the reporting process of this race. And now let's get over to Michigan's 11th race, the 2nd congressional district. We are watching closely as well. Incumbent Rep. Haley Stevens challenged by Republican Eric Ishaki. This district covering parts of Wayne and Oakland counties. You see Ishaki up at the moment with only 3% reporting at this moment. We will continue to caution viewers that any results tonight are unofficial, and some jurisdictions report in person first, then absentee, and that could dramatically shift the results. And with a record turnout in early voting, plus the estimated 2 million today, we may not know until tomorrow or beyond the results of these races. Dave?
All right, Brian, thanks. And now that the polls are closed and the numbers are beginning to come in, both Republicans and Democrats watching with bated breath, to be sure.
This has been an election update from 7 Action News. Stay with 7 Action News and WXYZ.com for all your election coverage.
Welcome back to our historic special election coverage. On this day, we're looking at the ballot from top to bottom tonight.
And counting those ballots will continue for quite a while. Looking beyond the presidential race tonight, two critical House races are also things that we're monitoring. Our Brian Abel now with us. Brian, what's an update?
Well, these two races have incumbent freshman Democrats that are trying to hold their seats. That came with that 2018 blue wave here in Michigan. So let's start with the 8th Congressional District. Incumbent Rep. Alyssa Slotkin, challenged by Republican Paul Young. We see only 2% voting so far, so keep that in mind. Now, this district covering Ingham, Livingston, and parts of Oakland County. And then let's take a look at Michigan's 11th race, the 2nd congressional district that we are watching closely tonight. Incumbent Rep. Haley Stevens, challenged by Republican Erica Shockey. This district reporting only 3% right now. It covers parts of Wayne and Oakland County. So still very early, but you see these early results at this moment. We'll continue to caution viewers that any results tonight, they are unofficial, and with some jurisdictions reporting in person first, then absentee, any of these could result in a dramatic shift throughout the night. And with a record turnout in early voting, plus that estimated 2 million today, we may not know until tomorrow or beyond. Chuck?
Very early numbers right now. Brian, thank you for updating us.
Absolutely. 9:10 a.m. host, political analyst Livonia Perryman. She joins us now. Thank you for joining us. You're doing all right?
Doing fine. I'm here with you. I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you. You've been keeping a very close watch on several statewide races and also some local races. Let's start with some of the races, people that are trying to become judges in this community.
Absolutely. One of the positions, Supreme Court, Michigan Supreme Court Justice Markman, he is really retiring because, you know, you can't be a judge here in the state of Michigan after you're 70 years old, young 70 years old. Mm-hmm. And so his seat is up. And while he was on the bench since 1999, we've had a conservative leaning court. Well, we have two justices who are potential justices who are very progressive, who are running, and they are on the ballot today. And it looks as if one may be elected and take his place, which would lean towards being a more progressive court, if that does take place. And her name is Mary Beth McCormick. And she is really, it looks pretty good for her. I'm not predicting. I don't have a poll, but I would say that things look pretty good for her. But so far, that conservative court really showed their colors last week or 2 weeks ago when the governor was told that she had overstepped her boundaries in terms of really shutting down the state of Michigan to protect citizens here in the state. And so there are people who are hoping that the leaning of the court will change after today.
And McCormick coming on late with the TV ads.
Yes.
But I did want to circle back to the Blight Initiative and talking about, you know, the city having that $250 million in bonds to take down those dangerous structures. A lot of feelings about that, mixed feelings within the community.
Very much so. In fact, that's our proposal in, and they put out their proposal no. And individuals are saying that here's $250 million that the mayor is asking to either refurbish homes, is 8,000 refurbished homes or 8,000 homes that they're going to demolish. The question some people had to ask was, how did you come up with 16,000, 8,000 for refurbishing, and then 8,000 to demolish, when at the same time that many folk were asked in terms of their taxes for the homes that might be next door to one of those homes that they're asking the money for. So how can you ask for $250 million from me or someone, and then you really owe the citizens of Detroit over $600 million? That's the question. And people feel very offended by this proposition being on the ballot today. Very, very, very sensitive about that.
Livonia, there are also some mayoral political overtones going on with that proposal in. Anthony Adams, who used to be deputy mayor, is opposing it. Mayor Duggan and Conrad Mallard, who's the current deputy mayor, are for it. Anthony Adams pretty much said on Spotlight just a couple of days ago that he's pretty sure he's going to be running. Okay.
As you can tell, there are certain positions and certain proposals and certain initiatives that are being looked at and people taking sides very early in the game. I would say sometimes those are the wise people who are really looking for a position as they decide to run for office. And surely there will be many people who are interested in running against Mayor Duggan come next year or the year after that. And this position or this proposal is what people sometimes call a community-based proposal. That is saying no taxes will be taken out. It'll be okay. We just want to make sure that your neighborhood looks good but you got to pay for it. And people are not really buying into that. But we'll see, because it was on the ballot today. We will see.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, all eyes are staying tuned. We thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Laverne.
Yes.
Truly, my pleasure.
Florida, another key battleground state, of course, in this presidential election. The counting has already been underway.
Tori Dunham from our sister station, WXYZ-TV in Florida, joins us now, and she's from outside Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach. Tori, give us some insight into what's going on there in Florida.
This is kind of
Go ahead.
For sure. This is sort of a unique night in Florida in general, as it's obviously very windy and it's cold for us. I know not cold for you, but we're getting even more unique situations in. Actually, within the past few minutes or so, Governor Ron DeSantis here in Florida and Senator Rick Scott have declared President Trump the winner of Florida in the election, although they're doing that despite the fact that it has not officially been called by any major news outlet. So we have that dynamic going on right now. But as far as the votes being counted here in the state of Florida, they've been counted basically since 7 o'clock when the polls on the east coast of Florida closed, and then the panhandle was 8 o'clock. But Florida has really been poised to get those ballots in pretty quickly and get the results in quickly with the mail-in ballots as well as the early voting. They've had all that set up for days, and now those have been processed and counted. Although important to point out, here in Palm Beach County specifically, a bulk of the voting was the mail-in ballot voting, and they still are counting those at this hour. So while we have some politicians saying Florida has gone to President Trump, at this point, votes are still being counted, and it has not been declared, to my knowledge, since I started this live hit, by any major news organization.
Tori Dunham, thank you so much for joining us, bringing us up to date on what's going on there in Florida, an absolutely key state in this election process. Thank you. And joining us now is Kathleen Barzen-Culver. We call her Katie. Dr. Culver is the director of the Center for Journalism Ethics at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Your work has been watched all across this country. You're getting a lot of attention, particularly because of disinformation and voter intimidation and some of the key toolkit projects that you've been working on there at the university. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for inviting me, Chuck. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. What have you discovered? You've been keeping a close eye on this, and you're always concerned about ethics and the voting process.
Well, we've discovered a lot of misinformation in battleground states like Wisconsin, like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and some of those have been very targeted efforts. We've done our best to try to help preserve the integrity of this election by giving both journalists and citizens ways to debunk and even pre-bunk that misinformation.
You know, there have been so many personal things said and situations that have happened that you know, many journalists are being put on the forefront where, you know, the fake news rhetoric is going around and all of those things. So, you know, and even personal feelings are getting involved at a time, of course, when social media, you know, allows people to express how they feel in different ways that we as journalists didn't have before in the past. So how do you see that playing into how we're viewed when we communicate what's happening?
Yeah, I think this is an unprecedented time in news media in my lifetime. Perhaps, you know, if we go back to the 1800s with a purely partisan press approach, you would see this kind of rhetoric. But honestly, I never thought in my lifetime I would have a president of the United States calling the news media enemies of the people. That said, I think we do have work to do in journalism to rebuild trust and help people understand how news organizations can be community pillars, that they can bring us together rather than tear us apart. We do have evidence from research that when communities become news deserts, when they lose their local news outlets, they become more polarized. We pull apart from each other. And I think that that's a dangerous trend. There was an interesting piece in the Bulwark this week about how the loss of a community newspaper, it drives us more toward politics and more toward politics at a national level when those are the only outlets we can turn to. We forget about the high school soccer game. We forget about the teen of the week and celebrating the local level experiences that should tie us together.
Professor Culver, what are you hearing from the students there at the University of Wisconsin? You're so involved in grooming that next generation of reporters, writers, editors. They're watching this, I would assume, with great interest. What are you hearing from them?
I'm hearing tremendous enthusiasm from young people, and I'm going to be very interested to see over the next few days. And just a reminder to everybody, we may not know anything about the outcome of this election for a few days. I think we're going to see some strong voter turnout in the 18 to 24 demographic, maybe even slipping up to 30-year-olds. And I'm certainly seeing that in my classes. Elections passed, and I would say, how many of you are voting? I would get kind of a ho-hum response. When I've asked that in some sections over the last few weeks, I've had 100% of students saying, yes, I'm voting, I'm going to stand up. So I'm very optimistic when I look at this generation. They've been through a lot. And I think they want to solve problems. The political issues, social issues matter to them, and they want to have a hand in where we're headed as a country. And I applaud that.
And their energy is welcome.
Sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, that energy is welcome. They look forward to making change, at a time when a couple generations were taking heat for being disinterested and not being connected. This seems to really have put the young voice to the forefront.
And I think you see it in some organized ways. I think the students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, I'll admit I was kind of a cynic when they began their effort with March for Our Lives, but they have really been a tremendously strong voter registration and turnout machine. And they've had some political victories in local and state issues. And so, some of us as we get older can be pretty skeptical about the generations that follow us, but I'm really not. I'm very optimistic about this generation.
Very quickly, the Shadid Awards fall under your watch, the Pulitzer Prize of Ethics in Journalism. Are you optimistic when you look at past people that have won, that our industry in this very partisan world is going to be about ethics in the future?
Yeah, when you look at the nominees, the finalists, the winners of that award, the Anthony Shadid Award for Journalism Ethics, you can't help but be impressed. And we all rely on that information. Nights like tonight, we can fall victim to the idea that everything is about a presidential election, but it's not. It's for those of us who are trying to live our lives, it's about family, it's about safety, it's about money, it's about community, it's about our health. And when you see this reporting and the really courageous and responsible choices that are made, you feel that there's a lot of positive stories to tell about journalism and a lot of trust that we should invest in organizations that are trying to get this right. We're human, we make mistakes, but there is a lot that we should trust about the value that news media are trying to bring to us.
Professor Culver, thank you so much. Give our best to all our friends over in the Badger State.
Thank you so much, and good luck over there in Michigan. We're battlegrounds across Lake Michigan.
We appreciate
Indeed, we are. Thank you.
Wisconsin is another swing state where presidential candidates stumped time and time again. And Shannon Sims from our sister station, WTMJ, joins us from Milwaukee. Shannon, good evening.
Good evening. The polls closed just about 15 minutes ago here in Wisconsin. And at this hour, 102,000 absentee ballots have been counted out of the more than 169,000 absentee ballots that came into the state. And that really is a record. And it says that people are turning out here in Wisconsin. Now, I am here in Central County, and I want you to understand kind of what is going on here. So let me show you. Behind me, what you see here is more than 400 workers who are opening up those ballots, giving those ballots voter ID numbers as well, and then taking them over to the tabulator, where then those numbers are being counted and those ballots have been cast. Here, I want you to understand also, just to give you some perspective of how important this election really is, in the number of registered voters in the city of Milwaukee, which is over 300,000, again, I told you, absentee ballots were 169,000. So it is very clear that people are voting. And even today, we know that there were people out voting despite this pandemic.
So leading up to the election day, Shannon, can you talk about what it's been like as voters have been heading into the polls?
Well, I think it's important to note that we here in Wisconsin have experienced many of the things that both candidates have been talking about while they've been campaigning. We've experienced COVID-19, we've had social injustice, we've had unrest. These are all important issues to every aspect of this viewing area here in Milwaukee County. So when we talk about coming up to the days of the election, we've seen both Trump and Biden both here in our area a number of times talking to voters about those specific issues. And again, I can tell you that with the number of people who have come out just in absentee ballots alone, it is very clear that the issues are on the minds of voters here in the battleground state of Wisconsin.
Shannon, the people are watching very closely, particularly Milwaukee and the African-American vote. Is it your sense that there will be a turnout close to what was maybe in 2008 and 2012 when President Barack Obama was on the ballot, or will it be more like 2016?
I think we're going to have to really wait and see when we start dissecting the votes in regards to the different blocks here, but it's definitely clear that Biden was pushing to get Democrats to the polls this year. And if we just look at the numbers of our absentee ballots, this is twice of what was happening in 2016. So it's just really a wait and see game for us here.
All right, Shannon, and we're waiting and we will all see. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Now, from 7 Action News, this is an election update.
Millions of votes have already been counted, yet we are still hours away from having a clear picture of where tonight's election is headed. Thanks for being with us. I'm Dave Llewellyn.
And I'm Carolyn Clifford. The polls in Michigan have been closed for almost 1.5 hours, and results are starting to trickle in. Here's a look at where we stand right now with some of the races across our state. I'm going to look at the presidential race and the U.S. Senate race. And Dave, you're going to read the numbers that are just into the 7 Action newsroom right now.
With 10% of precincts reporting across the state, Donald Trump, the president, with 58% of the vote. The former vice president, Joe Biden, with 41%. Again, that's with 10% of precincts reporting across the state. And in the U.S.
And then let's take a look at the Senate race. Absolutely.
Yep. Republican challenger John James with 58% of the vote to 40% for Gary Peters. Again, 10% of the vote in there.
All right, 7 Action News reporter Ross Jones is at the hub for Detroit elections. Ross, what is developing right now with you?
Well, let me give you the headline. It is good news for the Joe Biden campaign. We just left a press conference with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and City Clerk Janice Winfrey. They are projecting that turnout in the city of Detroit will be between 53 and 55%. Now, why is that significant? Well, back in 2016, when Hillary Clinton ran, turnout was only 48%. That was disappointing for Democrats. While she won Detroit overwhelmingly, she didn't win it by enough to make the big difference in Michigan, where she lost by 10,000 votes overall. 55% would be the highest turnout we've seen in Detroit in 20 or 30 years. And if it turns out to be that number, as the city is projecting, that would be very good news for Joe Biden. They are telling us here at the city that they expect to have final results around this time tomorrow, so the counting will continue, but they say they are on track to know the winner, at least in Detroit, tomorrow. Back to you.
All right, Ross, thank you. Now
Good
to
news
Oakland
there.
County, where some crucial races are being decided.
7 Action News reporter Simon Shakehead joins us live from Birmingham, where he just got an update from the clerk there. Simon.
Carol and Dave, we just checked in with the clerk's office. Now, keep in mind, this is a county of 1.25 million people. County Executive Dave Coulter, a Democrat, currently trails former state senator and Republican Mike Kowal. Numbers show Kowal leading Coulter with almost 162,000 votes to roughly 120,000. That is with 13% of precincts reporting. Judge Karen McDonald, a Democrat for prosecutor, trails former assistant prosecutor Republican Lynn Getz. Numbers show Getz with roughly 157,000 votes to McDonald's roughly 125,000. Again, that is with 13% of precincts reporting. And Sheriff Michael Bouchard, a Republican, leads challenger Vincent Gregory by 190,000 votes. That's compared to 102,000. Certainly much more to be decided, a lot more votes to be counted. Carol and Dave, will send it back to you.
Simon, thank you.
All right,
we have
thank you,
Team 7 coverage of Election Night 2020 in Metro Detroit. And as the results come pouring in across our region, the state, and the nation.
You can certainly count on Action News to bring you up-to-the-minute coverage throughout the night on this historic election.
Our coverage continues through 10 o'clock on Roku, WXYZ.com, and all of your favorite streaming devices. We'll also bring you election updates every half hour on Channel 7, followed by in-depth coverage on Action News at 10 on TV 20 and at 11 right here on Channel 7.
Make sure you stay with us online and on 7 Action News for the very latest results, analysis, and reaction. We'll see you in just a little bit.
This has been an election update from 7 Action News. Stay with 7 Action News and WXYZ.com for all your election coverage.
Millions of Michiganders have cast their vote, and the counting is well underway. We're following results up and down the ballot.
Political analyst Bill Ballinger joins us now. Bill, how are you?
Chuck.
Good. All right. They call you the guru of Michigan politics. So let's tap into some of your wisdom. What have you been keeping a close eye on? And particularly, I'm interested in what's going on with the Michigan House.
Yeah, the State House of Representatives, a huge race or bunch of races, 110 seats. They're all up, all on the line. Democrats need a net gain of 4 seats to gain control of the House. So that is something I'm looking closely at. If it's a big Joe Biden blue wave year, he could have coattails that will drag some of those Democrats across the finish line, particularly in Oakland County. Then I'm looking at the Supreme Court, Chuck, where the Republicans control 4-3. And there was a recent very controversial ruling by the court striking down Governor Gretchen Whitmer's power to issue executive orders in the pandemic. And there is some prospect that if the Democrats can gain control of the court, which they could do, 4-3, they could reverse that. So those are big stakes in Lansing, in addition to all these glamorous races at the top of the ticket, like president and U.S. senator.
Bill, let me take you back to the Michigan House for just a second. There's also talk that Democrats may not get control, but we might end up in a 55-55 tie, which would take us back to the days of Hilligans and Curtis Hertel when we had the co-executive branch working there. Talk a little bit about that and the potential for that.
Chuck, I've been around so long, I've seen 2 55-55 ties, one in 1966 and one in 1992. In 1966, a Democrat, E.D. O'Brien, took a walk, and the Republicans were able to organize the House. But in 1992, the Republicans and Democrats worked out a deal of shared power. And you had co-speakers, Paul Hilligans and Curtis Hertel, and you had share committee chairmanships. It was remarkable. And many people, Chuck, many people think that session of the legislature in 1993-94 was the best legislature we've had in the last 40 years.
They had to work together.
Exactly.
Hey, Bill, this is Dave Llewellyn. Big picture for us here, the importance of Michigan in this presidential race. We're hearing more and more as the night goes on. Look at Michigan, look at Wisconsin, and look at Pennsylvania, maybe to decide this thing again.
Oh, that would be unbelievable, because the polls coming up to the finish line haven't really shown that looks like it's going to be the case. Everybody has started to shift their attention to Florida and Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona. But guess what? If Trump wins all those states down south, which he did 4 years ago, yes, it will come back to Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania.
The Senate race, Gary Peters and John James, what kind of chance do you give John James in this race, running his second time? He ran against Debbie Stabenow last time around, came close, but didn't get the brass ring.
He's certainly got a chance. He has been running better in all the polls against Gary Peters than Donald Trump has against Joe Biden. But he's shown to be about 3 to 4% behind on balance, on average, in most of these polls over the last several weeks. But of course, that was about the amount that Donald Trump was supposedly behind 4 years ago. And guess who won Michigan? So it's not over until it's over. And I think John James definitely has a chance.
Last question for me. Governor Rick Snyder, former governor, weighed in on this, Republican governor, and he said that he was voting for Joe Biden. Do you expect that to carry any real weight in this state?
Unfortunately for the former governor, I don't think it will carry any weight. I think it would have been better for him if he just stay out of it. Rick Snyder, whatever kind of a governor he was, and I actually think he did a lot of very good things as governor, he's kind of a man without a country, Chuck. Nobody really loves him. He has no base. He's kind of frittered away his standing in the Republican Party, his party, and Democrats have never felt comfortable with him, particularly after Right to Work. So Rick Snyder, I don't think, is going to persuade anybody to vote one way or the other.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to continue to watch as the vote comes in. Bill, as always, we thank you for your time tonight and insight from your so many years of following this political process in the state of Michigan. And I say that in the kindest of way, of course.
Thank you for being kind. I appreciate it. I need all the support I can get.
Thank you, Bill.
My pleasure, Chuck.
All right, stay safe out there. Meantime, let's check in with Brian Abel. He's been following the presidential election. Brian, have you seen any recent numbers coming in?
Yeah, Dave, since the last time that we checked in, there's been quite a few developments in the race. Take a look at the electoral map right now. You see with 27% of the country reporting Joe Biden with a current lead, 122 to Donald Trump, the president's 92. Now, these come on the heels of the Dakotas. You see up there in the center of the country, those numbers coming in. Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, those all coming in for the president as well. And then for Joe Biden, for the Democrats, Maryland, Illinois, Delaware, Connecticut, New Mexico, New York, and D.C. So that is where things sit at this moment. We are still waiting for some key states early on here in the evening to give us some sort of indication of how things are going to go. Florida being one of them, Georgia being one of them, Arizona, and then North Carolina. All of those still waiting to see the results. Those precincts, they are getting close to being near the end of their reporting cycle here. So we should have some more developments in the next hour or two, hopefully. For now, I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Brian, thank you. We'll continue to watch the numbers right along with you. Chuck?
A whole lot to watch. Livingston County Clerk Elizabeth Hundley, she's joining us now. Ms. Hundley, how are you doing?
Doing very well this evening, thank you.
Very good. Can you give us some kind of update on what's going on there in Livingston County?
Yes, we had very good turnout at the polls today, like I think a lot of precincts did in Michigan. And at this point in time, we are about 22% fully reported with our election night results. Many of our counting board results are yet to arrive, so we're just plugging along right now.
Have you seen an uptick in the absentee ballots?
Oh, absolutely. We saw a historic number of absentee ballots issued here in Livingston County. And of those that were issued, almost 98% were returned timely and will be tabulated. So that's a great return number.
Boy, it sure is. Livingston County, historically, Elizabeth, a Republican stronghold. Are you seeing any sort of demographic shifts based on returns so far this evening, or are things holding true to form?
Well, what's very interesting is the in-person voting does show very strong Republican support. Now, whether that result is going to hold true for the absentee voting remains to be seen. But as it is, the in-person, very strong Republican voting.
Very good. All right, we'll keep a close watch on Livingston County.
Thank you much.
Elizabeth,
have a great evening.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Elizabeth Hundley, the Livingston County Clerk, joining us on our special election coverage here. Polls close in Arizona in just a few minutes. It's another important swing state to watch tonight. Reporter Cameron Pollum from our sister station KNXV has more from Phoenix.
We're at one of the state's busiest polling locations right now, this one located in Surprise, Arizona, not far from Sun City, a popular retirement community and an area that tends to lean conservative. We know that more than 1,000 people have cast their votes at this location so far today. At one point, more than 100 people were waiting in line. Depending on the location, we've seen wait times range from a few minutes to upwards of 30 minutes. We've also seen some issues when it comes to printing ballots. In fact, one location in Fountain Hills, Arizona briefly ran out of ink, according to one of my colleagues. Nearly 4.3 million people registered to vote across Arizona. We've already seen the records tumble when it comes to early and mail-in voters. As of Monday, more than 2.6 million Arizonans had already cast their vote. That eclipsed the state's state's entire vote count in 2016. Most of the mail-in and early votes have or are being counted as we speak and should give us a good look at the race about an hour after the polls close. Now, there's still plenty of time for folks to get out here and vote in person or drop off their ballots. Polls here in Arizona close at 7 p.m. If you're in line before 7 p.m., you'll still be able to cast your vote. In Arizona, I'm Cameron Polam reporting.
Cameron, thank you. Washtenaw County Clerk Ed Golembuski joins us now. Ed, an incredible number of absentee ballots issued last week. That's got to be very, very heartening, I would think. And what about the percentage of returned absentee ballots? What are you seeing there?
Well, we've received about 96% of absentee ballots that were issued here in Washtenaw County back, which is a great response rate. That's what we normally see in a November general election like this one. However, of course, we've issued a record number of absentee ballots, so it's really a heartening thing.
Yeah. What effect has the pandemic had on preparing for all that you're trying to do there? And have you seen any aftermath of it?
Well, yeah, the clerks here, city and township, as well as the county clerk here in my office, we've been preparing and have deployed personal protective equipment, hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, face shields, sneeze guard barriers like you see at the grocery store. The precincts and polling locations here in Washtenaw County were well equipped to provide a safe environment for voters today.
According to Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, more than 18,000 people who registered and voted today did that in Detroit, Grand Rapids, and in your city, Ann Arbor. Wow, that's an election day turnout.
Yeah, turnout has been very brisk today in the city of Ann Arbor and across Washtenaw County. Certainly, we are experiencing and will report, a record number of ballots cast tonight here in Washtenaw County.
All right, thank you so much for giving us an update there in Washtenaw County, and where the University of Michigan carries a lot of weight there. A lot of young people keeping tabs on this. Next time we get you back, we'll give us an update on transportation, which is a key issue there as well.
All right, very good. Ed, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
And joining us now is ABC News political consultant Matthew Dowd. He's joining us now.
Okay, waiting on Matthew Dowd from ABC, who will check in with us here in just a couple of minutes. Chuck, any surprises for you as we continue to look at the numbers here? 12% reporting, and again, we see President Trump at 57% to 41% for Joe Biden in the state of Michigan. But, these numbers coming in from various portions of the state, probably not the largest population centers necessarily within Michigan in these early numbers. Anything that you're seeing surprise you?
No, I think you analyzed it about right. It's still early into the evening, and as you said, the really big population centers in this state and other states probably have not really been counted yet. There's so many absentee ballots. They're trying to get through that, as well as the number of people that have voted in person today, and we're hearing long lines all across this country. Those tend to be the votes that come in later, especially some of your big city votes. Big city votes historically have favored Democrats, so it could be that Joe Biden pulls the surge as the evening goes into those wee hours. By the same token, President Trump certainly urged his voters to come out on election day, and we've seen that as well. So that may bode very, very well for him. It's early yet, and we're just going to have to keep a close watch on this and see where it all goes.
Well, and if you believe the polls, and based on 2016, we wonder sometimes, right? Leading into this race, Joe Biden was thought to have the lead, in terms of preference in the state of Michigan.
Right.
Be very interesting to see. President Trump, his family, many, many trips to the state of Michigan. They never gave up on Michigan, so we'll see what voters ultimately decide.
Well, the old saying is polls don't vote, people do, and they have the final word. And whoever is the best at getting their constituency out pre-election day and on election day. That's going to decide this. As you said, we saw a big surprise here 4 years ago. Hillary Clinton was showing she was ahead in all the polls, and President Trump pulled it out and made Michigan a red state again. So that could very well happen. Both of the teams have been campaigning very, very hard. The presidential candidates, the vice presidential candidates, they're just going back and forth. This is a real tug of war here in Michigan. As Professor Culver said, over in Wisconsin, very similar to this state as well. Pennsylvania, they've been back and forth throughout Pennsylvania. And they haven't just been going to the big urban centers, they've been going to some of the smaller cities as well, because they believe that you can't just put all your stock in one particular area. So this is a real tug of war, and it's a fascinating race, and we're going to have to see where this shakes out, but we're going to keep a close eye on it.
And depending on how Joe Biden fares here in the state of Michigan, maybe that'll help Gary Peters win a second term in the United States Senate as well. We'll see. He has a challenger, and a serious challenger in John James, a Republican businessman from Detroit. 13% of the vote in. John James leading Gary Peters, the incumbent Democrat, 59% to 40%. Again, where are the votes coming from? It's very, very early on in the process. But John James has run a competitive race against Gary Peters, who's completing his first term in the United States Senate.
No doubt about it, Dave. John James has run a very, very aggressive race, a tough race. He's a charismatic candidate. People really like him, and he has resonated all across this state, and he's gone from the UP on down. Gary Peters is the incumbent, so he has that working for him. He's trying to defend his seat. You know, just to watch all these dynamics are really interesting. This is the second time around for John James, and he came into this race with name recognition. He raised it even more. We saw the ads going back and forth. They did a lot of attacks on each other, a lot of accusations. You know, reporters, we had to do a lot of fact finding on both of their ads. That's been going on back and forth. But the interesting thing that you mentioned earlier that we'll have to wait and see is to see on the presidential candidates, what kind of coattails do they have? We have seen before where candidates have won the office for the White House, but they don't necessarily have those coattails to bring everyone else in with them. We saw it with Barack Obama, that he won this last time he ran. Look at all the seats that he lost in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. By the same token, we saw just in 2018, you know, the beating that Trump took in the House of Representatives and the control that the Democrats have there. So this can go a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Democrats like to flip the U.S. Senate. Clearly to hold their gains, they want Gary Peters to certainly win re-election. So it'll be very interesting to see where this winds up. And we may not know again until sometime tomorrow, Chuck.
No, you're absolutely right. It's being watched all across the country. Republicans have high hope for John James. Democrats very much want Gary Peters to stay there. We've got 2 Democratic senators from the state now. They'd like to keep it that way. So both sides have put a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy into it, and it's a real battle. And who keeps control of the Senate is going to be key. If for some reason Democrats can get control of the Senate, keep control of the House, that gives them a lot of power. And if they can get Joe Biden in the White House, then they would have truly done their job in terms of their party. But there's a lot of opposition to that and a lot of little chess pieces on that that have to fall right into place before that happens. So we're going to be watching very, very.
A lot on the line. This is a very consequential election, no matter how you want to look at it.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back.